Hi everybody, welcome back. Last time you saw me I was working late, and this is where you find me again. So at present I'd put the first coat of the retouching over the extender piece, and I was doing this with my restoration chips that are bound in a resin. So the first coat it doesn't cover too well. You can see on the left hand side there where it's kind of a little bit brownish. That's the first coat going on, and then this is the second or top coat. So as you can see, I'm being quite liberal here because I've got quite a large area to cover, and what I'm doing is I'm just feathering over the filled area so you can see that covering in. On the right hand side of the canvas you can see where I've already started to blend in the extender piece to match the existing drapery work as well. So as I go along, I'm building up layers, and then I'm going to be toning those to match the rest of the composition. So yeah, once I've got that first coat on, the second and third coat allowed me to actually blend those in and match that shading on the fabric in the background. I still wonder if this portrait was kind of half finished. We've got a bit of a tassel of the drapery in the left hand side that you can just about make out, but I do think this drape would have been opening out onto some kind of vista. When I've looked at other works by Riley and Closterman, this seems to be the case. And this is the small retouching that we were aware of on his lips. If you remember, this showed up under UV, so it was something that I knew would remove once we started to clean the varnish off. So again, tiny little dots here just to build that lip area up. And the aim here is just to push it back. So when I'm retouching, I'm looking at the colour tones around the damage, matching those colours on my palette, and then just bringing them in. And as you add the colours, you can see if it's going to work or not. And sometimes a little dot can just go in, and then you adjust and blend with the next ones as well. So this will be first pass on the lips, and then once that's dry I'll be building that up again. You can also see all these horizontal raised cracks on the painting, and I think this is historical damage from when it may have been rolled. And then past restorations have been to touch on these and push them back. I think the tones in this face are incredible. It's just got such a softness to it. And then again in the eye, soft pigment tones sometimes removed with cleaning, and these did show up on UV as well, so I'm just going to push those back as well.
Okay, we've had some interesting theories about the hand on the Doctor here. As we know, there's overpaint that's tried to remedy what looks like a kind of stumpy, deformed thumb.
One theory I quite liked was that he was originally holding the book, and then the book was moved to be laid flat on the plinth, and then that left a funny composition where the thumb was in place. So you can see here I've put the book in. That could be something that is possible.
I'm erring on that this is the original hand now, whoever painted it, whether it was Riley or Closterman or an assistant. But there does seem to be something quite wrong, or the way he's rendered that thumb. But Riley being someone warts and all, if we think of the Charles II portrait, where he exclaimed, "Odds fish, then I am an ugly man." Maybe he did paint warts and all, and maybe this Doctor did have a slightly deformed thumb. One theory that's been proposed, which I think is a great idea, is that perhaps, he'd injured himself during surgery. In those days, maybe there was a blunt instrument or something, the tools were not quite as they should be, and he might have caught his thumb, or, he did have some kind of wound on that thumb that has not healed properly. Maybe that's why he wears gloves. Maybe that's why the thumb was presented in that way. But I'm just going to show you that another thing that kind of backs up that this is the original composition of the hand is the brush strokes. So just 1 second, let me show you this.
So under the magnifier here, the loom, you can see those very defined brush strokes that are in the crease of the thumb and the outline of the thumb, and the rest of the painting around there is very flat. So I think this was kind of sketched in with the with paint. There's no other lines there. There's nothing else to suggest the thumb was in a different position. So in my mind, this shows that this was the original composition, and maybe this was just the way that Riley presented it. And that thumbnail, again, I don't see any erroneous brush strokes. There's the curve of the thumb, there's the nail. So for me, this is what it actually looks like.
So with that as our rationale, I think we'll keep this as it is, as this is the original paint of the hand, whether it was stumpy or not, that's how it's been rendered. And we are just going to retouch around that just to bring back the cuff and the sleeve as well. So we're going to retouch that in, and we're going to leave this hand as it is. Even though it is not as contrasty or the colours aren't as rich as the face, I do think this is how it was intended, for better or worse. So yeah, we're going to put those back in now.
So again, you can see here where parts of the canvas has worn away. Again, maybe the past restoration, when it was lined, they retouched over that thumb or over cleaned it or something, and you can see there you've got the ground of the canvas underneath. So I'm just going round now with this very small brush and just touching in, matching that black tone, and just following the shape of the larger brush strokes that are actually present. The hand's it is very softly painted. There's not too much contrast in there. And I know that the face is very softly painted as well. And this was one of the things that Riley was known for when he was actually doing his paint. He was like a gentleness and sensitivity of approach in trying to depict the characters of his sitters. So they always had an air of modesty about them. It's kind of like a sober manner, really, and he passed this on to his pupil, Jonathan Richardson, and that went on to influence the painting of his pupil, who was Thomas Hudson, and then later Joshua Reynolds, who I think we've all heard of, was his pupil as well. So Riley did go on to become principal painter to William III and Queen Mary when they came back over after Charles II was kind of, let's say, chased out of his throne. So Riley and Closterman became court painters along with Godfrey Kneller. Godfrey Kneller was a little bit more flamboyant and more of your, I don't know, a social mover, shall we say, within the court. And I think there was quite a bit of rivalry between the two fractions. Riley and Closterman also reinstated something I'd never heard of. It was the Virtuosi of St Luke's, and known as the St Luke's Club or Dyke's Club. And this was a small, exclusive social gathering of artists and gentlemen who met in various London taverns to discuss matters of taste and judgment. And Closterman and Riley reinstated this, and I don't think Kneller was really invited, so I think there was some rivalry there. But they used to have these dinners, and they'd entertain people, and they'd have raffles for paintings, and it was almost like one of the first organised art societies really in Britain. And its members were, after this, actively involved in the earliest efforts to establish an academic system. So from this, the Royal Academy of Arts was kind of born. But I just quite like the fact that Riley and Closterman didn't really get on with Kneller, and I don't think he was ever really invited to these events. And one of the other things this led me to look into was Kneller's Wikipedia pages. And if you look at Kneller's Wikipedia page, it just said that he was principal painter to William. But actually, he was in conjunction with Riley. So this led to me altering or editing, shall we say, the Wikipedia pages of Godfrey Kneller and Sir Peter Lely to reflect that. So I think it's fair to say that my research has took me down a rabbit hole, and yeah, I feel like John Riley deserves his place amongst these great artists. Just because he wasn't as flamboyant as Kneller or as socially climbing, shall we say, doesn't mean to say he shouldn't deserve his place in history. So again, here I'm retouching small little dots. You set yourself up in front of the portrait, and then you just start seeing all the little areas. So it might look like I'm doing a lot, but these are just tiny little dots to push those cracks and creases back, so that when you stand back at viewing distance, you start to see the painting as a whole. So here you can see in detail these little surface cracks and fissures. A number of things will cause these. So one of them being rolled or badly tensioned. So these cracks are quite wide spacing, but there are some that are very tight and more horizontal in structure. So I think they're from some kind of rolling. Some of these can just be from general fluctuations in humidity and the canvas moving back and forth. And then in that top right corner, there's some bits where the paint has got a bit of crackle there, and that can be from where the if a painting has been hung over a fire or near heat, and the paint kind of contracts, and then you get these little fissures that open up and show the ground layer underneath. So on the drapery here, you can see with that barrier varnish on, it's quite reflective. So sometimes it's quite hard to judge, and black for me can be one of the hardest colours to retouch in, because it can be built up with different glazes and have different pigments in there. So I have to do the same. I have to build up with glazes and quite translucent paint layers to be able to push these back. There are a number of black pigments that we tend to use ivory black, but they had bone black and different mixtures, shall we say, for want of a better word, of pigments. So part of the research that I do want to do is start to fabricate or make or recreate some of these old pigments that they used to retouch with. So that's something I'm going to develop in the new year, or look into a little bit further. So yeah, just tiny little strokes pushing those little cracks and fissures back.
Where is it? It's there. Another late night on the Doctor. It's got a bit of reflection on there. So I've just spent probably, so you can see that better, I spent a couple of hours on him there. Just very, very fine retouching on those cracks. So I do think he's been rolled at some point in the past. Not sure why that would be. Maybe it was cut down. Maybe they were escaping something. Maybe they were avoiding the Civil War. Maybe they were avoiding, I don't know, some kind of mad 17th century insurrection or rebellion. But whatever happened to the Doctor, he was cut off from his stretcher, I think, and rolled. And that's what's given us all those horizontal, very fine surface cracks and fissures on there as well. And then, as we know, he's been relined and then extended at some point as well. He's looking good. I will take some pictures tomorrow in better light when you've not got all this reflection on him. But for all intents and purposes, that's the restoration, well, not the restoration, the retouching done, until I put the final coat of varnish on. So I'll be putting a couple of coats on, and then I'll see if there's any bits that do need a little bit of tweaking or any areas that do need some adjustments. But other than that, I'm pleased with him. He's looking good. And yeah, we'll come back tomorrow and see how he fares for, well, we'll let that dry for a couple of days probably first, and then we'll apply the final coats of varnish.
So this is the hydrocarbon reversible varnish that I'm just applying now. So I'm just going to, it'll probably be maybe a couple of coats of this, just making sure I get an even layer, and then I'll be going horizontally and vertically just to kind of get an even finish. But as you can see here, the colours are really starting to come through now, and that varnish just gives us a really nice even finish to the painting. I just love his face. I just love the way it's been modelled. I think he's got kind of a kind face. I think he's lived well. The other thing that I started was, I start to look into the clothing. So from the Regency Gent episode, we had a bit of information about his cravat. Well, this cravat was called a Steinkirk, and it was even longer than a standard cravat at around 6 feet long. And the scarf was originally named after a German battle. And the idea was that the soldiers mounted on horseback would wrap a length of fine, natural coloured silk or linen around their necks several times, tucking it into their waistcoats, and this gave some protection to their throats when an opponent took a swing at them with his sword. This would often deflect the blow and stop the flesh from being cut. This method worked so well and gave the added protection against the cold that some soldiers continued to use it in civilian life, where it became a very popular as a fashion accessory. So the Steinkirk cravat, something that I didn't know about. I'm not sure I'd want it to try and see if it protected me against a sword. But the other thing I was looking into was who this person could possibly be. He's obviously a gentleman. He's got his full bottom wig on, and he's got the book with the Hippok in, which is a reference to the Hippocratic Oath, which is historically taken by physicians as a kind of medical ethics. But on that book was a monogram or initial of W. Now, the only W that fits into the time period would be a Sir Thomas Witherly, who was a physician in ordinary to King Charles II. His dates are 1618 to 1694. Witherly features in Samuel Pepys' famous diary as the physician that comes to visit his dying brother and confirms that he is not dying of syphilis. So Pepys was quite pleased about that. The infection became worse though when he did die the next day. Witherly was also accused of being complicit in a plot to turn a changeling into the Prince of Wales, being a witness to the birth of the much contested Catholic heir of James II. So he was accused of just kind of backing up the king's request to try and get a Catholic heir to the throne. And I think this was contested by many Whig politicians, and I think he kind of maybe ended his career a little bit, or there's a bit of shame attached to it. But Riley dies in 1691, Witherly in 1693, aged 76. So if Witherly is at court around this time of Riley, he would be around 60 years old, which could sort of tie in with the age of the Doctor in this painting. Again, all speculation on my part, but it would be nice to think that maybe this would be Thomas Witherly. He's certainly a gentleman, he's certainly in that time frame, and if that book is anything to go by with the Hippocrates and the Hippocratic Oath on there, then that could be a real strong link to who this person actually is. I have been reading another book that I'll put a link into about this period, about the Duke of Monmouth, and just a fabulously exciting period between the royal family and the heirs to the throne and the Catholics and the Protestants, and it just really brought the whole period alive to me. So I'll put that in the description for you if you're interested to find out a little bit more. So you can see now I've got one full covering of the varnish on there now with the horizontal strokes going across, and then once that's on, I will then start to work vertically as well and make sure any gaps are filled and that it's got an even coat across there. I always quite like this stage because you see the real gloss sheen of that varnish, and it just pulls the whole portrait together and gives it some depth. So as the light bounces through that varnish and hits the pigment and bounces back, it really starts to bring that portrait alive. So yeah, there's a certain, the varnish starts to kind of go off a little bit, and then you can kind of work it, so you're kind of working it evenly across. And you have to look at a bit of an angle, so you can see in this bottom corner there's a little bit there where there's a few lines that have missed, but as I keep going over it and working that in, I'll be getting an even coat across the whole picture. So once I'm happy with the finish, I'll remove it to this small area here. It's not like a spray booth as such, but it's a sealed area underneath this workbench, and it just stops any kind of dust or fibres attaching to that varnish as it's going off. So I'll just kind of block that in there now, and it just stops any movement of any particles hitting that surface. And I make sure I'm not gilding or doing anything else dusty for the next hour or so while that varnish goes off. And waste not, want not, I'll just save the remnants of my varnish here. My bench is nice and clean and tidy, always a pleasurable sight for me. And that varnish probably takes maybe an hour, a couple of hours for it to completely dry, but I'll leave that overnight and then come back tomorrow. So once I've taken it out of the little booth, I'll always have a bit of an assessment, and this part of the corridor's got quite good light, and I'll just be looking to see if there's any areas that need any small adjustments or any bits that might need retouching in there.
Okay guys, that's me done with the Doctor. It's been a fabulous portrait to work on. I hope you've enjoyed the journey. He revealed some secrets to us and has kept some to himself as well. Maybe at some point there'll be some more discoveries with him down the line, but as it stands, that's my last work on him. He's varnished now. I'm pleased with the finish, and yeah, he looks brilliant. So I'm so happy that we got a result with him. I hope you've enjoyed watching this. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit like now, it's really important, and subscribe to the channel. I'm up to nearly, 80 subscribers on Patreon. If you want to head over there and get a chance to win one of these fabulous, well, cleaner than that, Bloomfield Art aprons, please head over there. Other than that, I will see you soon for my next video. I've got some great portraits coming in. Okay, guys, happy holidays and see you all soon. Cheers, bye.